Have you ever felt like time repeats itself, but no one else notices? Nora Blake thought she lived a normal suburban life until her security camera captured something chilling at 3:17 a.m. every night. A man with no face, a door that opens on its own, and a mirror that doesn't always reflect her. What began as quiet suburban paranoia spiraled into a terrifying realization. She was caught in a loop, and someone, or something, was living her life in her place. This is the story of a haunted house that doesn't kill. It replaces you. Would you survive? The Loop? Suburban streets are supposed to feel safe, predictable, comforting. But on Ivy Lane, nestled between picket fences and trimmed hedges, one house hides a secret that's anything but ordinary. In Strange Stories of Suburbia, The Loop, at 3:17, you'll follow the chilling journey of Nora Blake, a woman whose peaceful life unravels the moment she notices her trash bins mysteriously moving in the dead of night. From that point on, everything she knows begins to distort. Clocks stop at exactly 3:17 a.m. Her security cameras glitch, only at that time. And worse, her reflection begins to act on its own. What begins as an eerie curiosity soon spirals into a dark mystery involving a long-abandoned house across the street, a faceless man who reappears each night, and a sinister trap that doesn't want your body. It wants your identity. Nora isn't just being watched, she's being studied, mirrored, and eventually replaced. This isn't a ghost story. It's a memory trap. A loop. A slow, creeping horror where reality itself begins to bend, and time plays by a different set of rules. And when the truth is finally revealed, the real question becomes, who will take your place? So dim the lights. Put your phone on silent, and prepare to question everything you know about identity, time, and the places we think are safe. Nora Blake had lived on Ivy Lane for 6 years, and in all that time, not a single soul had moved into the house across the street. Number 46 stood like a forgotten photograph. Color faded, corners curled. Its shutters hung crooked on their hinges, and ivy curled greedily up the bricks like fingers trying to choke out the past. Children crossed the street rather than walk in front of it. Teenagers dared each other to touch the doorknob on Halloween night, and none ever did. So when Nora spotted movement in the front yard one morning, she nearly dropped her coffee. A man stood on the porch, still as a statue. He wore a gray sweater, pressed black slacks, and black shoes polished to a shine. Odd, she thought, not just the fact that someone was finally there, but that he had arrived without a sound. No moving truck, no taxi, no car parked along the curb. Just him, and a single black suitcase. He didn't knock before entering. He simply unlocked the door and stepped inside like the place had been waiting for him. Nora watched for a long time, peering through the slats of her blinds as if they offered more than just a filtered view. They gave her permission to stare. But the man didn't come back out. Not that morning. Not that afternoon. Not even when the sun dipped low and painted the cracked sidewalk gold. She tried to focus on her work, editing freelance articles for a travel blog, but every now and then her eyes drifted back to the window. The curtains at number 46 remained drawn tight, not a single flicker of light visible through them. No signs of furniture being moved, no sounds, just silence. Around 10 p.m., she made a decision that she told herself wasn't nosy, just curious. She stepped outside with a trash bag in hand and wandered toward the curb. As she dropped the bag into the bin, she stole a glance across the street. The house was utterly dark. Then, movement. In the far corner of the yard, near the overgrown hedges, the man appeared, walking slowly, one deliberate step at a time around the edge of the house. Not pacing, not wandering, circling, head tilted slightly down like he was studying the ground. Nora squinted in the dark. Was he barefoot? She ducked behind her car, heart beating faster than it should have. Something about his movements was wrong. Not clumsy or drunk, but too smooth, too practiced, like someone retracing old steps, someone rehearsing a memory. Suddenly, he stopped, turned. He looked directly at her. She froze. She wasn't even sure how he'd seen her. She was crouched, half-shadowed behind the front wheel, but his eyes locked onto hers with eerie certainty. Then, without any expression at all, he raised one hand. Not to wave. Just to let it hover mid-air, fingers slightly spread, palm facing her. And then he lowered it and walked calmly back into the house. The door closed behind him. Nora rushed inside and double-locked her own. She tried to sleep. Really, she did. But something about that brief moment, his stillness, the way his eyes met hers, clung to her like cobwebs. Her thoughts spun in circles. Was he dangerous? A recluse? Or just another lost soul hoping to escape the noise of the world? At 3:17 a.m., her phone buzzed. She grabbed it, expecting some notification from a late-night spam email. Instead, the screen lit up with an alert from her security app. Motion. Detected. Front driveway. She opened the camera feed with a trembling thumb, and there he was. The man, standing at the very edge of her driveway, just beneath the glow of the street lamp. Hughes wasn't moving. He wasn't doing anything at all. He was just staring at her house, eyes locked on the front window as if he could see her lying there in bed, holding her phone with wide eyes and a heart that now thudded in her throat. She blinked. The feed glitched. Just for a moment, and when it came back, he was gone. The next morning, Nora didn't open her blinds. Not because she was scared, she told herself, just cautious. After all, suburban life came with its fair share of odd neighbors. Eccentric, maybe. Quiet, sure. But harmless, at least, she hoped. And yet, all throughout the day, she felt it. That sense of being watched. Not with menace, not even with curiosity, but with familiarity. As if someone across the street already knew who she was. For the next 3 nights, Nora kept her curtains drawn, but that didn't stop her from knowing he was still out there. It was a strange thing, the way you could feel, a presence without seeing it, like walking into a room just after someone's left. Air still warm, unsettled. That's what it felt like in her house now, as if something invisible had crossed a threshold and hadn't quite left. Each night, she checked the security footage on her phone. Each night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., the motion alert would ping, and the video would show the same thing, the street lamp across from her house flickering once, then going out. For a moment, the world would disappear into darkness, the camera blinking into static. Then, in the last second of the recording, the street lamp would buzz back to life, and the trash bins would have shifted again. Not tipped over, just moved, a few inches to the left, lined up perfectly. It was almost worse than finding them knocked over. Intentional, precise, ritualistic. She called the security company. They said the footage looked clean, no signs of tampering, but they couldn't explain the lights, or why the camera only glitched at exactly 3:17 a.m. On the 4th night, the dreams began. She found herself standing in the middle of the street, barefoot, wearing the same flannel pajamas she had fallen asleep in. The night air pressed in around her, thick and humid. Across the road, the house, at number 46, looked taller than she remembered, its windows like dark eyes. and someone was watching her from the upstairs window. No face, just the sense of being studied. Then a whisper behind her ear. "You left the door open." She turned sharply. Nothing. And yet, when she looked back at her own house in the dream, her front door stood wide open, swinging gently as if caught in a breeze she couldn't feel. She woke in a sweat, sheets tangled around her legs, heart racing. The time, 17 a.m. Of course, things got stranger. Her clocks began acting up, not just the digital ones. Those could be blamed on a power surge, maybe, but also her old-fashioned kitchen wall clock, the one that ran on a battery and hadn't needed resetting in months. One morning, she found all three clocks blinking. 3:17 in unison, frozen like a snapshot in time. She replaced the batteries, checked the wiring, called an electrician, who insisted everything was perfectly normal, but the next morning, they were all blinking again. 17. It was becoming a pattern. She couldn't ignore. Even Luna, her cat, sensed it. Normally aloof, Luna had become skittish, darting from room to room with her ears pinned back. She stopped sleeping on Nora's bed, and instead took to hiding under the couch or inside the linen closet, only emerging in the afternoon sunlight. And when night came, she'd sit in front of the front door, growling, low, guttural sounds that Nora had never heard from her before. One night, Nora made the mistake of opening the door to show Luna there was nothing there. There was nothing there. And yet the porch felt full, like she was interrupting something she wasn't meant to see. She closed the door quickly, bolted it, and leaned against it with trembling hands. The neighbors began whispering, too. Mrs. Harris from 2 doors down stopped Nora on her morning walk. "You've seen him, haven't you?" she asked, clutching her floral shawl tighter. Nora hesitated. "Who?" "The man in number 46, she said, glancing around as if the houses themselves might overhear. "He walks like he's rehearsing death." Nora blinked, unsure what to say. Mrs. Harris leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "That house, it takes people." "What do you mean?" Nora asked, but the old woman only shook her head and shuffled away. That evening, Nora fell down a rabbit hole. She poured herself a glass of wine, sat at her laptop, and began searching everything she could about number 46 Ivy Lane. There wasn't much. Just a few public records, all of them dry and technical. But buried among the city's property archives, she found something odd. The previous owners, the Robinson family, had filed a complaint in 2013. Unusual nighttime disturbances. Possible break-ins. Unidentified shadows inside residence. Police checked the property, found no signs of forced entry. The complaint was closed. 2 weeks later, the family disappeared. No evidence of foul play. Their car was still in the garage, their bank accounts untouched. The front door left ajar. It became a minor local legend. Some said they skipped town to escape debts. Others believed something darker happened. The most chilling part? The complaint had been filed at 3:17 a.m. A time stamped on the official report. Nora sat back in her chair, eyes wide, heart hammering in her chest. She felt like the walls were listening. That night she didn't sleep at all. She sat in her living room with every light on, Luna curled up, tightly beside her. At exactly 3:17, her phone buzzed. She didn't open the feed this time. She didn't need to, because she could already see the shadow through the frosted glass of her front door. It didn't knock, it didn't move. It just waited. By the 5th night, the silence had changed. It wasn't the peaceful kind that came with fresh snow or a quiet morning. It was dense, like the air before a thunderstorm, when every leaf stills and every creature holds its breath. The kind of silence that listens back. Nora had always thought of herself as grounded, logical. But logic had begun to lose its grip. Each passing night drew her deeper into something she couldn't explain, something that had already curled its fingers around her world. She hadn't heard from the man across the street since that first night. He didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't exist, as far as anyone else was concerned. She even asked Kevin from down the block if he'd seen the new neighbor. "What neighbor?" he said, frowning. "That house is still empty." Nora didn't reply. She didn't want to sound crazy, but a pit had opened in her stomach, and it grew deeper by the hour. On the 6th night, she made a decision she hadn't expected of herself. She was going to enter the house. Not out of recklessness, not out of bravery, but because something inside her had shifted, a quiet, urgent voice that said, "It's not going to stop unless you understand it." She waited until just before sunset, not so late that it would be pitch dark, but late enough that the neighborhood was winding down, that eyes would be elsewhere, inside, behind drawn curtains, locked in familiar routines. She stepped outside with a jacket zipped to her throat and a flashlight in her pocket. Her boots crunched softly on the gravel of her own driveway. Across the street, number 46 loomed like a mausoleum. The wind stirred dry leaves on the sidewalk, and for a brief moment, she felt she was being ushered forward by something unseen. The front yard was overgrown. The hedges hadn't been trimmed in years, and weeds choked the walkway. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and something metallic, like old nails or dried blood. The porch boards groaned under her weight. She reached the door and paused, heart hammering. The knob was ice cold. She pushed it gently. Unlocked. The door creaked open with a slow exhale, revealing darkness beyond. Nora stepped inside. The air was heavy, still, like a room sealed for decades. Dust floated through the single beam of fading sunlight from a cracked window. Sheets covered furniture. Ghostly shapes that gave the illusion of figures waiting in silence. The door clicked shut behind her. She stood perfectly still, listening. Nothing. And then, something. A soft thud upstairs. She flinched. Not loud, not threatening. Just enough to make her skin crawl. She clicked on her flashlight. Its beam cut through the dust and landed on an old portrait on the wall. A family of 4. The plaque below it read, "The Robinsons, 2007. Their faces were blurry with age and grime, but even in their faded expressions, something looked off. Not sadness. Not joy. Resignation. She moved deeper into the house, every step echoing like a whisper. The kitchen smelled like time left untouched. Old wood, stale air, something sour beneath it all. Dishes still sat in the sink. A spoon rested on. The counter rusted from neglect. It looked like someone had left in the middle of breakfast and never came back. She reached the bottom of the staircase and stared up into the shadows. "Hello?" she called softly, unsure what answer she wanted. None came. She took the stairs slowly, one creaking step at a time. At the top was a narrow hallway, lined with closed doors, all of them silent, except one. The last door on the right was slightly ajar. A faint draft slipped through the crack, carrying with it a scent that chilled her blood, burnt hair and ozone. She approached the door and pushed it open with trembling fingers. The room was nearly empty. A small desk, a mirror on the far wall. No bed, no curtains, just walls stained with water damage and something darker at the corners. She stepped inside and froze. The air was wrong here. It didn't move naturally. It folded around her like invisible fabric, as though she had stepped inside a second skin. She turned toward the mirror, and her breath caught. The reflection showed her standing alone. But something moved behind her. A shape. Tall, impossibly thin, crossed the hallway, silent and fluid like smoke. She spun around. Nothing. She turned back to the mirror. The hallway was empty. No shape. Just her, pale-faced and wide-eyed. She backed away, heart pounding like a war drum. Then she noticed the wallpaper peeling in the corner behind the mirror. Not peeling, torn. Curious, she reached behind the frame and tugged gently. A flap of wallpaper came off in her hand, revealing something strange underneath. Wooden boards nailed over something. She pressed her fingers along the edges. Hollow. There was something behind the wall. A sound snapped her attention away. A whisper, but not a voice. A memory. You left the door open, the same words from her dream. Only this time it came from inside the room. She didn't scream. She didn't move. Because deep down, she knew. She had just crossed a line. Whatever was inside this house, whatever had waited all these years, it had noticed her. She left quickly, nearly stumbling down the stairs. As she reached the door, she glanced back only once. The mirror at the top of the stairs now reflected something it hadn't before. The man across the street, standing behind her in the hallway, smiling. Back in her house, she locked every door, every window, closed every blind. She didn't sleep, not because she couldn't, because she didn't dare. The next morning came like a bad photograph, blurry, colorless, and out of place. Nora sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. Her eyes burned, heavy from another sleepless night, and her mind looped through the same question over and over. What was behind that wall? But even deeper than her curiosity, something else had taken root. An unease so sharp it felt like splinters beneath her skin. She hadn't imagined what she saw in the mirror. The man. The smile. And yet, when she checked her security feed, hoping to confirm her own experience, something, anything, she found nothing. No alerts. No footage from 3:17 a.m., not even static, just a blank gap in the recording. She called the security company again. They told her the camera had been offline from 3:12 to 3:19. No explanation. No outage in the area. No recorded malfunction, just a dead spot. Like time itself had been erased. That afternoon, she noticed something even stranger. On her hallway floor, just beneath the coat rack, were faint, muddy footprints. Not cat prints. Not hers. Human. Bare feet. Long, narrow toes. The impressions too clean, too precise, as though they hadn't walked in from outside, but had started inside the house. She followed them. They led down the hallway, into the living room, and stopped directly in front of her television, where they ended. No prints leading out. No exit. Just a full stop. She stood frozen, the walls pressing in on her like they were breathing. A quiet, rising pressure built in her chest. A signal, primal and deep, telling her she wasn't alone. She grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Static. Then a flicker. A single frame. She paused the image with shaking hands. The screen showed her, sleeping in bed, curled on her side. The angle was from her ceiling. She didn't have a camera in her bedroom. Panic clawed at her throat. She tore through her bedroom. Nothing in the corners, nothing behind the vents, nothing in the light fixtures. Then she noticed something odd above the closet, a small hairline crack in the wall. A hole. She stood on a chair, reached up, and found it. A tiny lens tucked into a drilled-out space. Wires disappeared into the wall behind it. She stepped down slowly, her heart an earthquake in her chest. Who had put it there? How long had it been watching? The man across the street? The house itself? That night she took no chances. She placed salt across every doorway, every window, pinned iron nails into the thresholds, taped symbols she'd found in old folklore books, wards against intrusion, against entry. She set her phone to record from midnight to dawn and placed it at the end of the hallway, pointed directly at her bedroom door. Then she locked herself in. At least, she thought she did. She awoke suddenly, disoriented, not in bed, not even in her room. She was standing barefoot in the middle of the street, her flannel pajamas soaked from the dewy grass, her hair tangled with leaves. The world was quiet, deathly so. No crickets, no wind, no cars, only silence. And in front of her, across the street, the house stood wide open. The front door, the same one she had once feared to touch, now gaped like a mouth ready to swallow. Light flickered from within, dim and golden like candlelight. She took a step forward, powerless against whatever had pulled her there. Then, a scream. Not from her, from inside the house. Familiar, terrified. Her voice. She bolted upright in bed, drenched in sweat. Her lungs burned like she'd been running for miles. She scrambled for her phone. The screen blinked. Recording saved. She opened the footage with trembling fingers. The hallway appeared on screen. Her bedroom door shut tight, then at exactly 3:17 A. The door opened. She stepped out, eyes closed, sleepwalking. Her bare feet slid over the salt line without disturbing it. She walked, slow and silent, to the front door. She opened it, paused, and then, without hesitation, stepped into the night. The recording continued. Empty. Hallway, door still ajar. Then, at 3:19 a.m., she returned, but not like before. She didn't walk back in. She flickered into the frame. A static glitch. One moment empty. The next, she was just standing there, staring directly into the camera. Eyes open, expression blank, and then, slowly, she smiled. Nora dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor. Her hands were ice. Her skin, cold and damp. She touched her lips. That smile. She hadn't felt it, didn't remember making it, and yet, there it was, recorded, undeniable. She wasn't just sleepwalking, she was becoming something else, or worse. Something else was using her body. She called. Kevin, she needed help. Someone to talk to. Someone who knew the neighborhood. Someone who remembered what had happened all those years ago. But when he answered, his voice sounded far away. Kev, she whispered, I think I'm losing time. I think I've been inside that house without knowing it. Silence, then his voice, flat, tired. You've already been in there, Nora. Her blood turned to ice. What do you mean? Pause. You went in. I saw you. Weeks ago. No, I didn't. I just went in for the first time. 2 nights ago. More silence. I saw you go in. A month ago, he said. But you never came out. Nora didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. Kevin's words looped in her head like a chant. I saw you go in, but you never came out. She repeated it aloud, as if saying it enough times would unravel its meaning. I did come out. I'm right here. But something deep inside her, something ancient and terrified, whispered, Are you sure? By sunrise, she had made her decision. If the house was looping her, rewinding and repeating her time like a haunted record, then the only way out was through. She had to find the source, the core. She knew where to look, behind the mirror. The one in the upstairs room where the air bent like a breath, where the shadows moved when they shouldn't. She gathered tools, a crowbar, a hammer, a flashlight, her phone with the voice recorder on. She stuffed a handful of salt into a pouch around her neck, just in case. As she stepped outside, Ivy Lane was bathed in golden morning light. Birds chirped, sprinklers ticked across freshly trimmed lawns. It looked like a normal day in a normal neighborhood, but the house across the street, number 46, still wore its veil of silence. No birds ever perched on its gutters. No insects buzzed near its windows. It was like nature itself refused to acknowledge its existence. The front door opened before she touched it. Not wide, just enough to let her in, a subtle invitation, or a trap. She stepped inside. The moment she crossed the threshold, the house shifted, not visibly, not physically, but the air changed, became denser, charged like the air before a lightning strike. Her ears popped. Her skin tingled. Everything was muffled. Even her footsteps made no sound on the wooden floor. Time moved differently here. She ascended the staircase slowly, like she was underwater. Her breath echoed in her ears. Each step stretched longer than it should have, the hallway above growing farther away, not closer. When she finally reached the top, her legs ached like she'd climbed a mountain. She paused before the last door on the right, the room with the mirror. It was closed now. She hadn't closed it last time she reached for the knob, cold again. Not just cool, cold like stone pulled from a grave. She pushed it open. The room was waiting. Everything was exactly as before. The desk, the warped wallpaper, the dust motes frozen midair like time had paused. But this time, the mirror had changed. It was no longer just a reflection. It showed movement. Shadows pacing in slow, unnatural circles. A pale hand pressed against the glass from the inside. A faint outline of a face behind it. Gaunt, hollow-eyed. Nora stepped forward. She could hear something behind the wall. A faint, rhythmic sound. Breathing. She moved to the mirror, tore it off the wall, and dropped it with a crash. It shattered, but silently, like the house had swallowed the sound. Behind it was what she'd seen before. Warped wallpaper and wooden boards nailed over something hidden. She raised the crowbar. The nails resisted her at first, groaning like the house didn't want to let go, but one by one, they gave. The last board cracked free and a hidden door emerged, narrow, discolored, carved with strange symbols she didn't recognize. She traced one with her finger. It hummed under her touch. Something alive was behind it. She hesitated, then turned the handle. The door creaked open on ancient hinges. What lay beyond was a space that didn't make sense. It was small, no bigger than a walk-in closet, but it felt endless. The walls were covered in writing, hundreds of symbols carved into the wood, looping over one another, layer upon layer. Some glowed faintly, others bled ink that moved like oil on water. In the center of the room sat a chair, and on that chair a box. Black, polished, unmarked. She stepped inside, and the door behind her slammed shut. The light from the hallway vanished. Only the faint glow of the symbols remained, painting the room in flickering reds and golds. The box seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. She reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the lid, everything stopped. the air, the hum, her own breathing. She lifted the lid. Inside was a VHS tape, old, dusty, labeled in trembling black ink. Just that, nothing more. She picked it up, and for a moment, the symbols on the walls stopped glowing. Silence rushed in like a wave. Then the door behind her creaked open on its own. Back in her house, she found the old VHS player Kevin had loaned her years ago for a retro movie night. She never returned it. She slid the tape in, pressed play. The screen crackled. At first, just static, then a home video. The Robinsons. The father sat on the couch, speaking into the camera. His hands shook. His eyes were bloodshot. If you found this, it means the loop is still running. We couldn't break it. We thought if we stayed awake past 3:17, it wouldn't happen. But the house, it remembers us. Every night it pulls us in. Every night we wake up somewhere new. His voice cracked. It doesn't want to kill us. Not in the way you think. It wants to rewrite us, copy us, use us. The image flickered. Then another scene. The same room behind the mirror, but not empty. People were inside. Some sleeping. Some standing in corners, frozen in place like mannequins. All of them had blank expressions, eyes open but not seeing. The camera panned and froze on a girl in pajamas. Flannel. Blue, Nora's. Breath caught. It was her. In that room, in that box-shaped prison, eyes open, no soul behind them. The tape crackled violently. Screams and static merged into one. The final frame was a close-up of Nora's face, only it wasn't quite hers. It was off. Too still. Too perfect. The tape cut out. Nora stared at the blank screen, her reflection flickering in the dark glass. She touched her own face, felt warmth, felt breath. But her mind whispered, "Which one are you now?" For a long time after the tape ended, Nora didn't move. The television screen had gone black, but its reflection still clung to her face. Her real face, or so she hoped. But doubt now stalked her like a second shadow, whispering questions in her ear she wasn't ready to answer. The girl on the tape had looked like her, moved like her, worn the same flannel pajamas with the tear in the sleeve she'd meant to sew months ago. But the eyes were wrong. Empty, yet watching. She got up slowly, legs stiff and trembling, and crossed to the bathroom mirror. For a full minute she stared at her own reflection. She blinked, so did the reflection. She raised her left hand. It mirrored her exactly. Then, just to be sure, she whispered, "Who am I?" Her reflection answered nothing. But something in her stomach tightened. A coil pulled taut because she didn't remember falling asleep the night before. She didn't remember waking up either. She just was. Later that day, she returned to the city archives. Her mind buzzed with questions about the Robinsons, the house, the tape, the loop. There had to be something more. Something official, documented, buried in records no one had bothered to dig through. The clerk was half asleep, sipping lukewarm coffee, but handed her a dusty file box when she asked for public reports on Ivy Lane. She combed through housing permits, complaints, electrical inspections, property transfers, and then something strange. A folder labeled Archived Robinson Incident 2013. Stamped across the top in red, Inactive, Case Closed. Inside were photographs, notes, and a single grainy surveillance still. Nora's heart skipped. It showed the Robinsons' front yard at night. A blurry figure standing near the porch. She brought the image closer. The figure was tall, thin, wearing a gray sweater, the same man she had seen on her driveway, the same one in the mirror. But the photo was dated February 17, 2013, 12 years ago, and in the notes, a handwritten line from one of the investigators. Male figure appears nightly between 3:15 and 3:20 a.m. Unidentified, not recognized by family, vanishes upon approach, believed to be hallucination or stalker. Final entry from Family Logs timestamped 3:17 a.m. before disappearance. No bodies recovered, home left unlocked. Nora's hands trembled. It wasn't just a haunting. It wasn't just a glitch in time. It was a repetition, a pattern, a design. Something had been happening at that house for over a decade. Something that began the moment the clock struck 3:17. And whatever it was tied to that man. She called Kevin again, hoping for clarity. But when he answered, his voice was off, sluggish, like he was half awake. "Kevin, it's me," she said. "I found a tape from the Robinsons. I was in it." Silence. Then, finally, "I know." Nora froze. "What do you mean you know?" "You were always part of it." Her blood turned cold. "Kevin, what are you talking about?" He chuckled softly, voice flat and mechanical. "You never came out of that house, Nora. You think you did, but it's already too late. Click." He hung up. She dropped the phone. Ran to the bathroom mirror again. Her reflection was already waiting, not copying her this time, watching her and smiling. That night she sat in the center of her living room, surrounded by candles and salt. The VHS tape lay on the floor beside her like a dead thing, heavy with unspoken truths. She placed it in a metal bowl and set it on fire. It crackled, sparked, hissed, and screamed, just for a moment. A sound, shrill and human, rose from the flames before fading into silence. The room grew impossibly cold. The candles snuffed out all at once. In the darkness, the grandfather clock in the hallway began to chime. She didn't own a grandfather clock. It struck once, then twice, then a third time. She looked at her phone screen. 17 a.m. Something stood outside her window. It didn't move, didn't knock, it just stared. She forced herself to walk to the window, breath shallow, sweat beating along her spine. When she pulled back the curtain, her heart stopped. It was herself, standing on the lawn, smiling, and behind her, the man in gray, eyes hollow, mouth slightly open, whispering something she couldn't hear. The world tilted. The walls pulsed. She stumbled backward, landing hard on the floor. The power flickered, all the lights went out. And then she remembered. It hit her all at once, like a puzzle snapping into place. Not a memory, but a playback. A second life that lived beneath the surface of her thoughts. She had entered the house weeks ago. She had seen the mirror. She had opened the door. She had found the chair and sat in it. She never left. Not really. The thing in her home now was wearing her face, a perfect copy. One that looped through her life, hit all the right notes, smiled at all the right times. But it wasn't her. And she had been watching it from inside the house, trapped in the hidden room, reliving the same, night over and over, looping, glitching, splintering. The truth wasn't that the house was haunted. The truth was that it was a machine, a memory trap, a place that didn't kill its victims, but absorbed them, made copies, used them to spread itself, like a virus mimicking a voice to answer the phone. Nora wasn't Nora anymore. She was a memory, echo looping inside a house that never forgot. And somewhere out there, on a quiet street called Ivy Lane, a perfect copy of her watered the lawn at sunrise, smiled at neighbors, and waited patiently for 3:17 a.m. Time meant nothing inside the house. There were no clocks, no windows to mark sunrise or nightfall, just endless gray, flickering shadows and the echo of breath that didn't belong to her. Nora sat in the corner of the hidden room, behind the mirror, her knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around them. She couldn't remember how long she'd been there. She didn't get hungry anymore. She didn't feel pain. But her mind was alive. It replayed everything, every moment from her life, every choice she made that brought her here, and every moment she watched it, the copy, walk through her world wearing her skin. The creature in her home now cooked her meals, greeted the neighbors, laughed at texts from old friends. It was her, in every way except that it wasn't. It was a parasite, a mimic, designed to blend in, and it was winning. But tonight, something changed. At 3:17 a.m., the walls pulsed. The symbols carved into the hidden room glowed brighter than before, red and gold, humming with life. The air grew thick with heat and tension, and from outside the wall, she heard it. Footsteps. But they were different this time. Not soft like before. These were heavy, as if the floor itself tried to resist them. Then, a click. The hidden door creaked open. Light spilled into the space for the first time in what felt like forever. Blinding. Harsh. White. And there, silhouetted in the glow, was the man in gray, closer than ever before. His face wasn't monstrous. It wasn't even angry. It was hollow. Worn down by time, his eyes were cloudy, almost milky, like he hadn't seen light in 100 years. In one hand he held a black box, in the other, a mirror. He placed both on the floor in front of her without speaking. Then he stepped back, his form flickering like a dying film reel, and vanished. Nora stared at the box. It looked identical to the one she'd found before. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a reel of film, old, brittle. It was labeled in smudged red ink, original. She opened the mirror next, but this time it didn't show her. It showed her copy. In her house, sitting calmly at the kitchen table, reading a book she used to love. It turned the page with an emotionless rhythm, then paused, and slowly looked up, as if it knew it was being watched, as if it wanted her to see. Its smile was mechanical, too perfect, too empty. A voice echoed in the room. It wasn't human, not male, not female. It was a voice of many, layered, fragmented, echoing from the walls and floor and air itself. You are the original, but the copy has been accepted. It lives your life better than you did. Fewer doubts, fewer fears. You may reclaim your place, but only if the loop is broken. Choose. The reel of film began to unwind on its own, threading itself into the wall behind her. Images flickered. Her childhood, her mother's hands baking bread, her first heartbreak, laughter under holiday lights. Her life, stripped bare. The voice returned. To break the loop, you must take the place of another. One must remain. One must carry the memory. Decide. The mirror split into two images now. On one side, her copy. Peaceful, safe, static. On. The other side, Kevin. He was sitting alone in his home, eyes vacant, holding a phone to his ear. listening, waiting. Nora's mind reeled. She understood now. The loop wasn't just hers. The house fed on lives, on choices, on confusion. It trapped people in memories until their copies became more real than the originals, until the world outside forgot them. But she was being given a chance. One person could leave. One person could take their life back. But only by condemning someone else. She stared at Kevin's image. He'd helped her. He'd warned her, even if too late. But he'd been touched by the house, too. She remembered his voice on the phone. "You never came out." Was he already part of it? Was he waiting to be replaced? Or was he still himself, struggling to hold on? Nora's heart pounded. This wasn't justice. This was balance, and it demanded a sacrifice. She reached for the mirror. Her fingers hovered over the two reflections. Her copy. Kevin. And in that moment, she made her choice. Light exploded from the mirror, blinding and warm. The air cracked like lightning. The walls screamed, groaned, collapsed inward, not physically but like reality itself was folding, pixel by pixel, second by second. She felt herself lifted. No, rewound, through memories, through moments, through versions of herself. Then, silence. Nora awoke in bed. Sunlight streamed through the window. Birds chirped outside. Luna purred at the foot of the mattress. She sat up slowly. Her body ached, but she was there, present. Real. She rushed to the mirror. Her reflection stared back. Tired. Pale. But hers. She blinked. It blinked. She whispered, "Who am I?" And the mirror answered with her face. Nothing more, nothing less. Across the street, number 46 stood quiet. The windows were boarded now. The door chained. A sign had been nailed to the front. Condemned, entry prohibited. But sometimes, only sometimes, at 3:17 a.m., Nora would wake to the sound of static in her hallway. And once, just once, she found a single muddy footprint in her kitchen, leading toward the back door. She never asked where it came from. Because, she knew, some loops never fully break. They just wait. Weeks passed. Spring arrived in a quiet hush, coating Ivy Lane in green leaves and early blossoms. Birds returned to the trees. Children rode their bikes past cracked sidewalks. Lawns buzzed with sprinklers and the distant hum of lawnmowers. It looked normal, peaceful, safe. And for a time, Nora let herself believe that it was. She returned to her routines with the cautious steps of someone relearning how to walk through their own life. Mornings began with strong coffee and soft music. Work resumed. She watered her houseplants. She replied to emails. She laughed at videos on her phone. But underneath the rhythm of her days, something else pulsed, like a heartbeat beneath the floorboards. A sense that her world was now mirrored, and one small crack could let something else bleed through. She tried not to look at the house across the street, but sometimes she couldn't help it. Number 46 remained boarded up, wrapped in yellow caution tape that had long since begun to fray. The city had sealed it after an unstable foundation was reported, an excuse so thin it might as well have been written on glass. No one had entered since, but every night as the sun dipped and dusk settled across the cul-de-sac, the house cast a shadow that stretched just a little too far. And once, just once, Nora saw a curtain shift. She told herself it was the wind. She always told herself it was the wind. But the truth gnawed at her in moments of silence. While brushing her teeth, or folding laundry, or lying in bed before sleep claimed her, the truth that she had chosen. That someone else now lived behind her eyes, or had lived there? She had taken her life back, but what had been left behind in return? Had it really ended, or had the loop merely paused? One evening, as the sky bled orange and violet, she sat on the back porch with Luna curled on her lap. The breeze carried the scent of rain and something older, dust, stone, the faint metallic sting of memory. She sipped her tea, trying to enjoy the quiet. But then her phone buzzed, an alert from her security system. She froze. The time, 3:17 a.m. But it wasn't 3:17. Not yet. The sun had only just set. She opened the notification. Motion detected. Front door camera. She tapped the feed. The video showed her front porch. Empty. Silent. Still. Until, for just one flicker of a second, a figure passed by the edge of the frame. Not walking, gliding, just a blur, a smear of something vaguely human, but too tall, too smooth, then gone. She rewound, paused, zoomed, but the figure blurred no matter what she did, as if the image refused to be captured. That night she didn't sleep. Not because of fear. At least, not entirely, because of recognition. There had been something familiar in the shape, the posture, something she couldn't explain. And deep down, she knew. She wasn't the only one who remembered. In the following days, small things began to change. The clocks blinked 3:17 again. Only for a second, but enough to notice. Footprints appeared, in the soil near her back fence. Always barefoot, always leading toward the house, never away. Once she found a VHS tape sitting in her mailbox. Unmarked. She didn't watch it. She buried it in the backyard beneath the lilac bush. But even now, when she walks past that spot, Luna hisses and keeps her distance. Sometimes she wonders, did she win, or did the house choose her? What if the version of her that returned wasn't entirely Nora? What if every time she blinks, the loop restarts, just imperceptibly, resetting the day, reshuffling reality like a deck of cards? It's a question she doesn't ask aloud, because she suspects she already knows the answer. One final thing. Last week, while clearing her garage, she found an old mirror she didn't remember buying, still wrapped in plastic. Leaning against the wall. She unwrapped it and saw herself, but for a fraction of a heartbeat, the reflection didn't match. She blinked. The mirror blinked half a second later. She smiled. It didn't. Not until afterward. Now the mirror hangs in her hallway. She walks past it every day, and every day it watches her, quiet, still, waiting. Because some houses don't vanish when condemned. Some loops never fully break, and some watchers never stop watching. If this story sent chills down your spine, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe for more psychological horror and paranormal mysteries. Comment below. What would you do if you saw your own reflection smile before you did? And remember, don't look in the mirror at 3:17 a.m.